Harriet, based here in Washington, D.C. Welcome to this webinar for the Incident Management Workshop. And as some of you may know, we hold these webinars periodically, somewhat yearly, actually, for our supply chain security efforts. This is the I'm just going to mute a few lines because I'm hearing a little bit of echo.
Muted.
Okay. I think that echo is gone now. All right, great. We hold these webinars fairly regularly throughout Rx-360 for both our audits and audit programs as well as the supply chain security effort. The one you'll hear today comes from our supply chain security efforts. The working group on incident management was formed by Rx-360 last year, and within just a few months, the group basically developed a white paper that can be used by stakeholders for their education as well as application within their industries. That white paper is available on the Rx-360 website and will be referred to today during the presentation. Just a few things before I go into introductions to our speakers today. I wanted to just go through our logistics here. I'm switching the slide over to a page that shows what you should see as attendees on your GoToWebinar window. Right now, all of your lines are muted, and the reason for that is just to cut down on all of the background noise that we sometimes get, especially with so many attendees. What we're going to do is go through the whole presentation and then at the end have a Q&A session. If you are interested in asking a question verbally through the phone or through your mic, you should raise your hand, and doing that, you press on the hand button there that you see at the bottom of that strip of icons on the left-hand side. Alternatively, if you don't want to speak your question, you can write in a question, and I will get it and read that out to everyone. And you can do that in the questions window, which you can see there also on this slide. And on it, you should see that in your screen as well. Okay, with that, I'm going to make some introductions here for our speakers. Our two speakers today are Megan Coatsworth. She's the manager of supply chain security at Pfizer, and she also kindly agreed to chair the incident management working group and help to lead this group in developing the paper that will be talked about today. Also, we have another speaker, Dale Schleich. He's Senior Product Manager, Global Supply Chain at Amgen, an active member of this working group, and he will also be presenting some information to you today as well. Okay, so with that, perhaps I'll hand things over to Megan and Dale. Megan, did you want to get started? Oops, let me unmute you. Okay, there. Megan, did you want to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I was
Sure.
On mute there. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for attending the Incident Management webinar today. We can just go right on to the next slide and get started here.
Okay.
Before we move into the details of the Incident Management White Paper, we just want to do a little grounding on Rx-360 for those who may be unfamiliar with the organization, and a little bit about the Supply Chain Security Working Group within Rx-360. You know, we're all on a webinar, so I'm not going to read the Rx-360 mission, but I do want to point out a few things. As with all missions, these words are carefully chosen. Key to
Unmuted.
patient safety. It's really foundational to all of the efforts that Rx-360 works on, both as a consortium itself and with partnering organizations. The other couple things here that really call out, I know, to me in working with the organization are the sharing of information and the implication that this is across the whole supply chain. Let me say a few things about that. Rx-360's one of the principles of Rx-360 is that these are collaborative efforts, and we are transparent with information that we can be transparent with, i.e. that's non-competitive across our companies. And if you aren't a part of it, it's a great resource for not only emerging best practices and collaboration with other peers in the industry, but it's also a resource for real-time intelligence. So I'd encourage you to look more into that. It's just a great resource for companies. The other thing, too, to emphasize is the implication across the supply chain and within the supply chain. When we talk about supply chain in Rx-360 and really at Pfizer, and I know at Amgen, we talk about it in terms of from raw materials to patient. So everything across that whole supply chain, raw materials, manufacturers, transportation, wholesalers, everything across that supply chain, right to the patient. And that's important because as we move forward in the deck, we'll understand that this incident management it's an important piece, but it's just a small piece. And there's a lot of work still to be done to secure our supply chains around the world. And we're really trying to work together through Rx-360 to do that. Just one more thing about the organization, and then again, just to add some context. The white paper here is a product of a work stream in Rx-360 called Supply Chain Security. There are 2 other work streams in Rx-360, and they focus on audit operations, and the third one focuses on external and regulatory affairs. So there's a broad amount of information available to people from Rx-360, not just in the supply chain security piece. Okay, next slide. This is just so we can just move forward. Thanks, Lee. Again, just on the supply chain working group, just what we want to emphasize here is you'll see today the incident management working group paper, and this is a best practice. It's not a standard, it's not a guideline, but it's the best of our thoughts. There's 10 companies that worked on this paper, and it's important to kind of think about it in that context. We think that it's a great starting point for companies that may have less mature incident response practices, and it's also a great checklist for those that do have more mature processes. So we hope you find that useful. Next slide. Just in the context of what the supply chain security working groups typically focus on, and again, I won't read these bullets, but basically there's a few things that I guess are important to underline. When we talk about criminal threats across the industry, we typically speak of them in terms of these threats here in this first bullet: counterfeiting, theft, adulteration, fraud, and illegal product diversion. The reason we put an umbrella around those criminal threats is that typically they're coming from the same criminal organizations, and it's really the same general types of efforts that's going to combat them overall, even though there are obviously specific considerations for risks and investigations for each of those. The other thing today is, again, and you can see this repeatedly as we'll talk through incident management and just in general in the supply chain security working groups, is that, just to emphasize again, that we are talking from raw materials to patients. We stop here from a working group standpoint on the, we haven't done a lot yet on the consumer end. You'll see some of a couple of the white papers in a minute. So a lot of what we focused on so far are more of the operations of what we can share within our companies. But over time, we plan to touch all of these areas. Next slide. So as I just mentioned, Rx-360 has published several white papers related to supply chain security. And you can see here there's a comprehensive white paper, one of the first white papers on supply chain security management systems, and a couple other topics. There are other topics in the work if you're interested in being involved in any of these topics and contributing to the knowledge for the industry. You can go to the Rx-360 website and find some contact information there. Next slide. Okay, so getting down to the topic of today's webinar, incident management. When we talk about incident management in the terms of the white paper, a couple things I do want to emphasize are we're talking about potential factors. We also are talking about in terms of some considerations to response. And we take those words carefully because it's not all of the every single thing you could do, and it's not every single thing for every case study, but it's general considerations that we, the 10 companies that worked on this white paper, got together and contributed and developed basically a guideline or a good practice, again, to use as a starting point or to check against your current systems. So with that, I will hand the slide deck over to Dale from Amgen and visit with you later on in the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan. Next slide, please. So we've identified typical product security issues as you see here on the left. These issues are a concern for pharmaceutical companies around the world. They also potentially put patients at risk, and that's why Rx-360 is tackling this issue, as the mission of Rx-360, as we've already said, is to protect patient safety. We recognize that many companies have processes to respond to product security issues, and with many things, some companies are more mature in this area, some are less mature, and some have no processes at all. In the Incident Management White Paper, we've collected and written down good practices to follow for companies at all levels of maturity. They represent the good practices as of today, but as criminal activity evolves, so must our practices and processes evolve. And above all, we agree that transparency and collaboration is the key to any successful incident management system. Next slide, please. We feel that security incidents can be broken down into 4 phases, as shown here in the chevrons. Incident Management White Paper concentrates on the 3rd phase of the security incident, incident management. The white paper provides a high-level overview of the process considerations to help companies establish and execute a product security incident management system within their company. Obviously, we think it's best to establish one's system and processes before incidents and issues occur, but we recognize that having an incident may in fact be the driver to finally establish an incident management system if one had not been established before. We also encourage the companies that do have an incident management process already in place to evaluate their process against the considerations we've provided and determine if there are certain items that should be incorporated into their existing processes. We've written a white paper targeting product security issues in the legitimate supply chain. There are some incidents that occur outside the legitimate supply chain. We feel that these processes we've developed can also be applied to those incidents. However, there are some specific investigation techniques that are used in illegitimate supply chain investigations that we don't cover in this white paper. Next slide, please. As we've already stated, the reason for this process is to protect patient safety. When an incident occurs, patient safety impact must be assessed. Incident management is therefore part of this overall process to gather, analyze, and review the information needed to conduct the risk assessment and determine potential impact to patient safety. Companies should consider developing and deploying an incident management protocol or process. At many companies, this takes the form of a standard operating procedure. We provided in the white paper a list of items or information that needs to be gathered to analyze the incident, to make initial internal reports, and to support further decision-making regarding the company's response to the incident. The white paper also provides a table that lists many different considerations that should be taken into account during incident management to ensure a complete, holistic view of the incident is maintained. There are two key points, though, that we do want to emphasize. Product security incidents require a cross-functional response. The response can't be done in a silo. Input is required from multiple functions. And timeliness of the information gathering and the decision-making is important to protect patient safety. Next slide, please. This is the list of the information, records, and initial decisions that should be gathered to support internal incident analysis and internal and external reporting. In the United States, the FDA has created their own internal procedure to respond to product theft notifications from companies. It's the FDA staff manual that was made effective in March 2012, their response to cargo thefts. In the FDA procedure, there's a list of questions that's even more extensive than this that the FDA is going to ask the company reporting the theft so the FDA can gather the information that they think is important for their decision-making in response to the incident. Now I'll turn the presentation back over to Megan, who will go into the tables of the considerations in more detail and then complete our webinar. Megan?
Thanks, Dale. Okay, so we just went over a list of some information that we thought is the sort of, a good list to start with for getting data from any kind of the incident. But once you get that data, you have to do something with it, right, as a company. And companies are all different shapes and sizes, but in general, somebody's in charge of doing some investigation. Somebody's in charge of taking some, quality assurance type patient safety considerations. Business considerations, they are more related to, the commercial piece of it or the actual supply chain logistics piece. And of course, there's always a general category or other. And we discussed as a group several different case scenarios of incidents. And what we came down to was that, in general, there are considerations that you take that are specific to each incident, of course. But there's actually a lot of common considerations you would have really for any incident across these different roles in the organization. Dale mentioned that it's a combination of a cross-functional effort. This emphasizes the cross-functional effort as well. And you'll see in the white paper itself a comprehensive chart filled out, and obviously we can't share it this way on the slide. But I encourage you to look at the white paper. We'll go through an example on the next slide, if you could go to the next slide, to just give you a sense of an excerpt from the white paper for the table. This is only for what's common for all incident types. And frankly, I'm not sure we fit everything on the screen, but we did the best we could with the slide to make it readable for the training session. But here, what you find is that, when you get that data, there are a lot of things that a company needs to consider in the interest of patient safety, in the interest of the laws and regulations for the different regions, in the interest of business considerations, in the interest of what criminal activity, criminal prosecution needs to take place. So these are our thoughts on what those considerations are for the different roles in a company. A couple things I would like to point out. One thing you'll notice, throughout the table is there are some overlap for a couple of the considerations. One example is a consideration listed for product for potential for product recall. That's in a couple areas in this table, and again, it emphasizes the cross-functional aspect of some of these decisions. I just want to point that out, that some of it has some overlap. The other thing is it's very important as part of the incident management paper. One of the pieces that we really drew the line at to understand the context is that we really said the incident white paper and the response and the procedures that we're sharing really start at a confirmed incident. So there's a lot of work up front that we know typically a security role would do in an organization to confirm the incident. But a lot of the incident response elements of this white paper are related to what happens, what we think should happen after an incident is confirmed. The other thing is that we cannot emphasize enough the patient safety piece and the safety risk assessment. You know, there's as many of us know that work with these incidents day to day, you should consider every incident, no matter if it's a couple bottles of some vitamins or a whole lot of some sterile injectables. Everything deserves a risk assessment. And while while these two examples are extremes, and there's a lot in between, throughout the process and throughout all of these considerations, when you're working with your cross-functional groups, we just emphasize to put patient safety at the forefront. Next slide. So just in some concluding remarks, I won't repeat the first bullet because I think I mentioned it about 6 times in the last couple slides. But again, you know, when whether you're working in a bigger company or a smaller company, the data and the decisions that can be made from the information that Gail spoke about earlier and some of the considerations in the table, the best solutions for prevention will likely come from a cross-functional group and from combined knowledge. That's one of the things also that Rx-360 emphasizes, and one of the reasons why 10 pharmaceutical companies can get together and speak about incident management. It is a non-competitive area, and we would prefer to join together and share our knowledge in this area as an industry to try to combat these criminal groups, because it's really the only way we're going to ultimately prevent these incidents happening in the end. It doesn't really matter if you have a great response process if you're not sharing the lessons learned and taking that life cycle full circle and trying to prevent the incident to begin with. And actually, without even knowing, I sort of just spoke to the last bullet. So I think I'll wrap it up there, and we'll allow the next half hour for questions or comments. Before I go to that, I would like to recognize the team that worked with me and Dale on this effort. Everybody on the slide that you see here was an active contributor. Really can't say enough about the partnership here, and honestly, just over the last couple months in which you find from working with Rx-360 and some of these groups, these people become your friends. So it's a really great group of people, and thank you if you're on the line. I really appreciate all that you did. Thanks, Lee.
Great, thanks, Megan and Dale. So I think we can take some time now to field some questions. As I mentioned, if you're interested in asking a question verbally, what you can do is click on the hand icon on your screen, and I will see it, and I can call out your name. Alternatively, please feel free to write in a question into your question box. I will field that as well. Okay, I don't see any verbal questions right now. Okay, any questions from anyone on the phone? Okay, I don't see any questions right now. Dale and Megan, let me just ask if there's others from the working group who had anything they wanted to add to the conversation here. Again, you'll have to raise your hand so I can see.
Well, Lee, this is Megan. Dale, I encourage if anybody would like to speak offline about this topic. I know sometimes it's hard to do in a chat room. If you contact Rx-360, they can find us, and we're happy to help share, information or answer questions offline.
Okay, that's great, Megan. I think that's a great idea. And certainly, so as Megan mentioned at the start of the call, what we try to do through Rx-360 is just make our discussions as open as possible. So certainly you can get in touch with many of us at the Secretariat through the website or directly with members of this group. We can certainly make them available if you have specific questions. Also, if you have questions that you just want to email to us, we're happy to get those over to the group as well. And I would encourage all of you, again, to just visit the website, look at all the available resources, such as the white papers, and also the information on the audit programs, as all of those sort of fit together in kind of the supply chain, security, and quality umbrella. Okay, I still don't see any other questions, so perhaps we can close now. One thing I did want to let all of you know is that this webinar, it was recorded, and what we normally do for all of our webinars is simply post these to the website so that people who weren't able to make it today can access the webinar on the website at a later date. We also have another webinar that will be likely coming up in May on illegal diversion, and it will be related to a white paper that will be coming out from the Illegal Diversion Working Group, and that should be coming out shortly. We'll make that announcement for the webinar and also for the paper probably in the next couple weeks or so. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. And we look forward to talking with any of you at a later time. Bye-bye.